Hello friends, how are you today? I've got a great presentation for you, and the big question we're going to ask on the Schumann relates to these vertical waves that we've been seeing and the syncing of those waves. Syncing meaning the repeated pattern of the waves showing daily on the Schumann. Number one, and then number two of them syncing to show at about the same time every day between about 9 and 10 a.m. I have a fascinating discovery. I made my last video on it, and I've folded that in to the story here. So I have an interesting story for you with 6 points and key questions that we can explore together. I hope you enjoy it. It's kind of the culmination of a lot of thinking and work on this idea about, are the M-class solar flares, which have been extensive this year, are they affecting the Schumann resonance? And did they create an energy that has been sort of going around the world repeatedly, affecting each and every one of us, and affecting, in my view, our human consciousness through the mechanism reflected in the mechanism of the Schumann consciousness. And do we affect the mechanism, or does the mechanism affect us? Do we create it, or does it create us? That's the question. But that question I will leave for a different day. Let's take a look. This is so exciting. The first question is, have the vertical waves on the Schumann resonance of August 2022, and they were appearing for 18 days, starting within the same hour between 9 and 10 a.m. on the chart, although they appeared every other day, starting at different times, but it was 18 days in a row. And have they synced to the July 4th, 2022 missing data event? And it's so fascinating. My last video was on this July 4th, 2022 missing data event. And what I discovered in researching and analyzing the Schumann chart is that at this event, there was a specific section of the chart with data missing between 9 and 10 a.m. And this is now where the waves had synced to. So the obvious question is, did something happen here that somehow caused a later syncing to this time? You can see that there was a fascinating expression of what I call the technological effect. I have a playlist on it, and we've seen this pattern before. It's not new. We've seen it before, sometimes very, very even more vividly. It's interesting because this pattern started about 21:30 on the chart. And fascinatingly, the wave patterns have started at about 9:30 a.m. and gone for hours to about 21:30. Isn't that interesting? There were these strange lines of vertical energy here, and what I had wondered was, did something happen here that countered them? Sort of like this up here. This appeared to counter this. It's a different characteristic of energy up here in the lower hertz on the chart than here. And it seems to me that this energy countered that effect and didn't allow it to go into the lower hertz. So did something much more interesting happen here? Interestingly, 24 hours later, on July 5th, at this exact same time, 9 to 10 a.m., a huge 1 hour long, quote-unquote, rod of white resonance, that's what I call them when they go from almost 0 to 40 hertz, appeared in this same space. So it's possible that if there was an energetic expression here, that it then gained in energy and expressed the next day to where we could see it, and it was we saw the data. Can amplitudes increase like that rather than decrease? Yes, they can. We've seen it on the chart before. The second fascinating question is, did the unusual patterns on July 31st, 2022, represent the moment of sync of the vertical waves to 9 to 10 a.m.? It's so fascinating because the sync that lasted for 18 days, where this vertical pattern moved together and started between 9 and 10 every day on the chart, it started on August 1st for then 18 days. On July 31st, we had this fascinating pattern and then this fascinating white resonance pattern, and neither of them was at 9 or 10. But they were both unusual looking wave patterns that have not been common on the chart. In particular, this one here it just had a hard stop, right? It's going and then the pattern just stops, and that does happen. But it almost looked like a record skip to me. Let me make it a little bit bigger here. So what I was actually wondering, because I have another video where I describe the metronome effect, which is how if you take a number of metronomes and they're oscillating, the metal piece within the metronome is moving back and forth, that's oscillating. And if they're at all different start times, fascinatingly, they will eventually sync together and oscillate exactly the same in exactly the same pattern. It's fascinating. And I think it also relates to the concept of even spacing of waves. But here's the thing. Right before you see the metronomes sync, where suddenly they're all moving together, it's a very exciting moment. I described it on another video that in human terms, there's almost like an in-breath, like that exciting anticipation. It's almost like a suspended moment in time. And so I wondered if one of these images represented that moment. And maybe it was both together, I don't know. If one of these or both represent that moment of right before the sync occurs. That's my phone, for goodness sakes. That's so amazing when that timing happens, isn't it? I try to turn off my stuff, but here's the question. Did the vertical waves sync to the July 4th no data event at 9 to 10 a.m.? Was there something there that caused a syncing of the vertical wave energy, the vertical lines, to that time? And in effect, did that event cause entrainment of the vertical wave energy to 9 to 10 a.m.? So what that would mean is the event happened on July 4th, and then 27 days, it took 27 days for the vertical lines to sync together, because there have been consistent dynamic vertical lines on the chart in 2022, and they've related to the times when we've had significant M-class flaring. I'm going to show you that in a moment. So perhaps, just like the metronomes take a certain amount of time to start to oscillate exactly together, perhaps for this energy in Earth's atmosphere, that amount of time was 27 days. And at the 27th day, which would be, I guess the 28th day is August 1st, they then potentially entrained to that frequency, that signature. I like to call them signature keys. Whatever happened, right, between 9 and 10 a.m., maybe there was something that happened that somehow caused an entrainment. That is a fascinating question. And that's something I'm going to be thinking a lot more about. But it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Totally makes sense. Now here you can see the 18 days of synced waves, where you can see they start basically at the same time every day. The fourth question is, or observation, is that it appears that large numbers of M-class solar flares may affect the Schumann resonance energy patterns. This vertical wave sync was interrupted 2 times. On August 19th, the pattern sync went out of alignment apparently due to massive solar storms and geomagnetic storms and disturbances, and significant M-class flaring. Those events lasted from the 18th, 19th to the 20th. By August 24th, the 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. sync of vertical waves have returned. Then a second wave of very strong M-class flares occurred, and that's the recent one that we're actually in now. Today was one of the days that we had 5 M-class flares on Sunday, August 28th. So this set of flares has gone from the 25th to the 28th as of this recording. During this wave of M-class flares, data at the 9 to 10 a.m. sync time was missing, and the pattern slightly shifted. We will see if the vertical wave pattern returns with a sync to 9 to 10 a.m. And if previous experience is a guide, it may take a few days for the sync to return unless further flares or geomagnetics stir up the energies again, which could happen since there was an extended M-class flare, at least one, possibly more, which could create a CME, coronal mass ejection, that then causes geomagnetic storms or disturbances in the atmosphere. So that's possible coming up in the next few days. So this is the pattern at August 18th. It got unsynced, and all the vertical lines proliferated during these solar and geomagnetic events. By the 24th, you see here, it had synced back to between 9 and 10 a.m., but there was an outpouring of solar energy. Actually, was there a geomagnetic storm? No, it was on the 27th that the geomagnetic storm occurred. And we will see if the sync recurs. Here's the fifth question. Did the large number of M-class solar flares influence or even create the extraordinary number of vertical lines on the Schumann resonance chart? In 2022, M-class activity has been extraordinary. You can see here that there have been 108 through today at 3 p.m. Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 108 M-class flares. And a lot of these do not count the secondary, this measurement does not count the secondary, for the most part, the secondary flaring that occurs in long duration M-class flares. So 108 and 4 X-class flares. So this is very strong solar energy. Now here's the chart for August, and you can see there have been 26 flares in August, almost as many as April. The extensive vertical lines showing on the chart were extremely, there was a lot of them, there was extremely a lot, starting mid-April, which is when these 30 flares all occurred in about a 2-week period, I believe it was. There may have been a few before that, but... So this is an example of what April looked like. You see how there's just so much of this vertical energy. Here's my 6th point and questions. Did the energy of the M-class flares cause a cascade of energy in the Schumann resonance that then began to sync in a metronome type effect? Because these very low frequency waves can go around the planet multiple times. And what I wonder is if the repeated flaring caused an unusual situation where there's an extension of the amount of time that the energy can be present in the atmosphere, where it's circling around the planet. In other words, does it kind of get reactivated with these repeated flares? A second question is, did an unknown event on July 4th cause an entrainment of the corresponding energies in the Earth's atmosphere to a 9 to 10 a.m. start time of the vertical curtain of energies? That's what I was calling these vertical waves here. And this is a picture of the repeating waves at the same time-ish every day with a metronome. That's what they look like if you don't know. And here's that July 4th event. So these are the questions, and I really enjoyed putting this presentation together. It was a lot of work, and if you have any comments or thoughts, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. And these are questions, a bit of a assertion and observations. I don't have a huge database of all the detailed information so that I could, comb through it with a fine-tooth comb, make analyses that are accurate. So therefore, I'm putting out a broad brush presentation here. But I think that the key points are sound enough that there's something to this. I've been looking at the Schumann resonance for many years now, and so I'm used to seeing what the energies look like. And boy, was I surprised to see the very, very, extraordinarily high number of just thin vertical lines on the chart that have been showing for a very long time now, months on the chart. People also talk about, are there strange energies from space coming in? Sure, there may be that as well. But the fact of the matter is we have the data that shows us for sure that the sun is emitting extraordinary energy, and it appears that that energy may be affecting the Earth zone and the Schumann resonance chart.